I think Candace Owens absolutely is in possession of a lot of truth, unfortunately. She says things that are true. Like I'm doing the Candace Owens Champion Spotlight, so I'm watching a lot of her podcasts, and it's like, she's not lying when she cites like specific historical events. I think Solomon Morell, all these different people or whatever. So she's fulfilling a role. Now, I would say it's unfortunate because she's incompetent in many ways, just like I am and you are in our own ways. I think she recently she said Stalin was Jewish or something, and even Nick Fuentes was like,
based. Okay.
Yeah, he was not Jewish. So she's clearly making mistakes. But like, I think it is good, for example, and I would say Tucker Carlson falls in the same role, that there is people within the Christian framework, the Christian nationalist framework, who are pushing back against like Christian evangelical Zionism. The politicians who say,
listen, my grandparents taught me the Jewish faith. The Jews are the chosen people by God. This is a godly decision on my part. Money has nothing to do with it.
That is the literal basis that U.S. politicians are deciding whether or not to allocate tax dollars, or more consequently, determine whether or not there's U.S. involvement in a imminent war with Iran, which we're still on the fucking potential edge of. And it's like, so Candace Owens, in her own maladaptive way, fulfills an important role. And you, in your own, what I would regard as maladaptive way, fulfills a role. When I say Candace Owens says true things, like specifically I'm referring to, like, what's his name? Solomon Morell or whatever. Is like, this Polish Ashkenazi Jew, I think, or I guess Ashkenazi is only from Russia, but Polish Jew who, after World War II, was like the head of a concentration camp against Germans, and then he fled to Israel, and they basically protected him. And the Polish tried to extradite him for war crimes, and it's like, okay, that's it. I looked it up on Wikipedia. Okay, this seems like a historical. She's not pulling this out of thin air. And my concern is then, okay, if normal people who are not Nazis, and I'm not saying Candace Owens is Nazi, but if normal people who are not so mentally degraded and delusional to have problems with Jewish people as a race, because there's a fundamental difference between Judaism, the religion, which can be and is fundamentally at the end of the day separate from Judaism or Jewishness as a race, and all of the autistic Zoomer Nazis are the ones who have problems with Jewish people as a race, which is insane. But like, if people who are not like, hey, yes, all religions should be criticized, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, all that, if those people are not the ones pointing out like, yes, Solomon Morell's a real person, this is not something we should cover up or whatever, then the only people who are in possession of this particular truth are now the radicals.
Which is a problem. I agree.
And it makes them seem more credible than they would otherwise had normal people just been more like, of course we're not afraid of truth. Yes, this is a real thing. And it's indicative of the truth, which is Israel is deserving of criticism, just like all secular countries, fundamentally.
Yeah, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is there has to be an extra careful attention paid to the rejecting of the conclusion, because people don't hear you rejecting the conclusion when you say some of the things they say are true. What they hear is a percentage acceptance of the conclusion. That there's a huge distinction between these two things. So, for instance, let's say that I told you I know a guy who can predict. Jesus Christ. If I lock him in a room, I know a guy who can predict with 50-50 accuracy whether or not it's going to be daytime or nighttime outside, right? Would you say that guy is correct?
50% accuracy?
Yeah, 50% accuracy. Would you say, yeah, he's correct some of the time? He's correct half the time.
I guess depends on the time of day.
Yeah, but it's a chance. He's flipping a coin.
Or if he pulls a card from a deck, it's either red or yellow, or red or black.
Yeah, red or black. Yeah, and he's right 50% of the time. Are you giving this guy credit as a truth sayer sometimes?
No, I would say, why did someone just make that statement? That sounds like something an autistic person would say, and I'd like to know what point they're making, because every statement is made in the context of some motivation for making the statement.
Sure, I agree with you 1,000,000%. But that would be my worry then with like Candace Owens stuff. That when I looked at, or at least some of her recent stuff, I think I watched, to be fair, I've only watched one full video and I've seen a ton of bizarro Twitter clips, but it looks like she's been, and I'd say she's been on probably for over a couple years now, on some crazy anti-Semitic binge. So every single fact that she's been digging up over the past 2 years has just been to find ways to show that like Jews are like controlling society, doing evil shit. So even if she does propositionally, proffer some things that are true, I would never say, Candace is right about some things, because I don't think she's right about anything. She might utter facts or statements that are true, but it's always in service of her ending like anti-Semitic Nazi goal. So whatever is
Candace Owens is an anti-Semitic Nazi. Do you think that's
absolutely, more so than most people blatantly are. I don't know if it's because she's black, she can get away with it like Kanye did, but yeah, I think she, or at least to be fair, just from the things that I've seen posted of her, and then some of the long form content I've watched, she seems to be very obsessed about certain Jewish conspiracies, though, that I've only ever seen given in Nazi circles. I think just today I saw
people could say the same thing about you, like with what you said about Palestinians or something like that, if they only saw the worst clips and then one full video.
That's true, but then if you were to ask me something very explicit, I would never dance around the question. I'd give you a complete and total upfront and honest answer, number one. And number two, you can find plenty of video evidence to the contrary.
I've watched enough Canada. She is a... Like
today, I think I just saw she was doing the ADL trope, where that first guy, there was some black guy or something that got exonerated, and people and people try to rewrite this story.
What is your understanding? Well, see, this I don't even want to get into this.
Sure.
Especially after that's why I was a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
It's like you said, I would never say that Candace Owens is right about anything.
Not with just that. No, I would have qualified that statement way more.
Okay, then look, fair enough. That's, I guess, I'm not saying, nothing I'm saying here is to convince you that I'm right or versus. It's like I'm just outlining my perception of things. It's like that's your strategy, and if you think that the way to push back against radicals is to, even if they say something that's like objectively true on like some specific historical fact, if someone asks you, like, yes or no, Candace Owens says some true things, and you say no, it's like, okay, that's one strategy, and we'll see how.
Sure, but I wouldn't.
My thing, I have the opposite inclination of like, of course she's. There is almost nothing, like you said, the Hitler thing. It's like, well, okay, Hitler loved dogs, whatever. It's like that's the archetypal example, whatever. Stalin was against wealth inequality, right?
Sure.
It's like my first instinct is to immediately validate whatever true things an extreme person is being said, so that their guard goes down, and I can like, of course, are there all these things that Israel does wrong? It's like, yeah, obviously, and anyone who says otherwise is gaslighting you. And then once people are like, okay, cool, I can trust this guy, I'd be like, yeah, but you understand that there's a fundamental difference between Jewish ethnicity and Judaism, right? Because they're not going to accept that message from anyone unless they're at least like, okay, at minimum, you have to agree that Candace Owens says some true things sometimes. And you're saying, well, no. And it's like, okay, I think that makes it difficult to create the inroads that.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that like it's the same thing as like what I was saying before, where like if I'm in front of Dave Rubin, I'm never condemning violence on the left in the presence of this guy, because he's never condemning violence on the right. I'm not going to give that concession to give the appearance of, because by doing some true things, I'm actually creating a false impression, even though we're saying things that are true, right? I condemn the violence on my side. Nobody should ever be getting assassinated ever or killed at political rallies in the United States of America. That's horrible, right? But if I offer that up, and I would say that is a true statement, but they on their side refuse to make any of the same concessions, I've created a false impression by uttering a true thing in the mind of the listener, because now they're like, okay, yeah, there are some problems on the left. I'll give Destiny credit for admitting it, but yeah, there are definitely some problems on the left that they need to deal with. I don't want the person to come away thinking that. I want them to hear me screaming and then think, damn, this Destiny guy's kind of unhinged. There's some problem on the left. I wish he'd disavow it. But also, damn, why can't Dave Rubin just say like J6 was bad, or just admit that like they should, right? I would rather them coming away with a negative opinion of both of us than me leaving them with the false impression as a reasonable leftist that we have issues that we need to work on and the right is fine. That's my issue. Oh, another really great example is in the same vein is I made this argument when Assange was leaking stuff about the DNC, that selective transparency is actually worse than no transparency, because
that's the same principle.
Exactly.
Of saying a technically true thing in service of a lie.
Yeah, because it leads you to the false impression that, well, I see bad things here, I don't see any there. These guys must be way worse than these guys. Well, you have no idea. And if you didn't know anything, you'd have a better opinion than if you knew some true things. So that's the broader thing that So like on a purely autistic, discrete level, like if you and I were just talking and you were like, Candace Owens says some true things, I would agree with every single thing you're saying. Not only would I agree with what you're saying, I would also agree that, yeah, you have to own the things she's saying. Otherwise, if you don't ever talk about those things, only the extremists talk about them. Of course, I would agree with that 1,000,000%. But in a broader conversation, I would never be caught dead on a show saying, Candace Owens does say some things that are true, for sure. That's never on its own being there.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess the way I see it is, and this is going to sound condescending or whatever. I don't mean it. I mean it like in the mean way that we were talking about it. It's like, this sounds like Tristana explaining to me why her kit is the best. It's like, it is if you go 20 and 1 and 5 or whatever. And it depends on the circumstance. Surely you would agree there is a massive chunk of Candace Owens' audience who you are utterly unable to reach because of the way that you approach things, for better or worse. And I'm not necessarily...
Probably, yeah, for sure, yeah.
That's my point then about why everyone serves enlightened centrism in their own way. Is like, you can't reach them, but like, I have no problem agreeing with Candace Owens that Antifa and the rioters of BLM did more damage than the January 6ers. That's a precondition for me even being able to talk to Candace Owens' audience. And I would say it's a precondition because it's true. And then the flip side, though, those are for right-wingers. A precondition for talking to the left-wingers is saying, well, of course January 6th is worse than BLM. And it's like, this goes down to then what is fundamentally true. It's like, it's all utility. It's like, what are you trying to achieve by saying anything?
Okay.
And that was the summary of my video that ended with me calling you autistic.
Sure. I can kind of understand what you're saying there, yeah.